Welcome everyone to Every Woman Empowered's Chit Chat. And I am your host, Shauna J. Cerniak, the founder of Every Woman Empowered. And today we have my co-hosts.
Jani Galarno, international artist and resident artist for Every Woman Empowered.
Mila Janu, certified laughter yoga instructor, founder of Let's Laugh Gig, and happiness ambassador for Every Woman Empowered.
And our special guest is an activist, an author, and a motivational speaker. Please help me welcome Theo Fleury.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I think this is going to be fun.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun. What better than three ladies and you? So it's
yes,
going to be a good
perfect.
time.
Perfect.
So thank you so much for coming on board with us and being on our show today, Theo. We got some absolute great questions for you, and we're really excited to hear your answers.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I always appreciate the opportunity to talk about trauma, mental health, and addiction. So
awesome. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Great.
So, Theo, what's your advice for people who have a friend or a family member that's dealing with some trauma through addiction? What's kind of the best thing someone can do in that situation to support them?
Well, that's the most common question I get asked. Or people reach out to me all the time and they say, I have a son, I have a daughter, a niece, a nephew, granddaughter, all these things, right? And you know what addicts and alcoholics are really good at is we're really good at collecting enablers. And the more enablers we have, the longer our behavior can last. And so I know that the email is coming from an enabler, okay? So I quickly either answer back, I say, does that person want help, okay? Because if they don't want help, there's absolutely nothing you can do to give them help. And, you know, what happens to the enablers is we, as addicts and alcoholics, we make them sick through our behavior. And eventually what happens is the enablers have to go and get some healing for themselves, okay? Which leaves the addict to his own defenses because he has no more enablers left to pick him up and dust him off and, you know, it's okay, everything's all right, you know? And then, you know, that allows us to hit the proverbial rock bottom where we have to make that choice and we have to make that decision. Am I going to live or am I going to die? Okay. And, you know, 16 years ago, that exact thing that I just talked about played out. And I had a fully loaded pistol in my mouth, ready to pull the trigger, not because I wanted to die, but because I was completely exhausted from living in emotional pain and suffering for the majority of my life. And I tried absolutely everything on the planet to get rid of this sort of silent pain that I'd been experiencing. And so because I couldn't pull the trigger and end my life, I'm like, okay, well, I better figure this out. I better figure out a way to, you know, live life on life's terms and deal with my trauma and deal with my mental illness and deal with my addiction issue. And so, you know, I started out on this path and on this journey and, you know, it truly has been the greatest journey that I've ever taken and the most rewarding and the absolute most healing piece of it. And, you know, the one relationship that I neglected the most through all of this was the relationship I had with myself. Okay. And figuring out how the hell I'm going to live the rest of my life in this body, you know, with all this trauma and, you know, all this emotional pain was, let me just say, it was a little crazy at the beginning, but, you know, it's become way more manageable. And like I said, and now, you know, I'm in a position to be able to help other people achieve, you know, the exact same thing that I've achieved. And really at the end of the day, that's how you heal yourself, is by helping other people.
So true.
Wow. your book, Playing with Fire, is seriously powerful. I got the chance to actually hear you at Little Warriors
Oh,
a
yes.
couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually painting while you were talking, so it was
Oh,
really
right.
interesting.
Okay. Awesome.
So since you've written that book, what has changed in your life? Like just like moving forward from that.
Yeah. Well, I think absolutely everything changed. When I sat down to write the book, I wrote it for very selfish reasons. Originally, I was just going to talk about my hockey career.
Yeah.
But, as we started to fill up the pages, the lady that I was writing the book with, she made me feel safe, and I trusted her, right? And then all this stuff just came out and started flowing on the pages and all that stuff. And so I remember when we finished the book, and 4 days before I was going to Toronto to launch this book, I was shitting in my pants, and I was so scared, and I was so afraid because I didn't know how all of you guys were going to react to what was in the book. And I also knew that I was going to go do a whole bunch of media as well. And I knew the only thing that the media would be interested in would be to re-victimize me at every opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. So because I'm a pretty smart and bright guy, I spent those 4 days on my computer researching absolutely every single thing I could find on the subject of child sexual abuse, because I wanted to get a story of hope and healing and recovery out to the masses. Mm-hmm. So I was very well prepared when I went to Toronto. I get to Toronto. The first 4 days, I do 300 interviews in the first 4 days that I'm there. And sure enough, the only thing they're interested in is the gory details of my sexual abuse, right? But like a good politician, you never have to answer the reporter's questions directly, right? So in every single interview, I had 5 main points that I wanted to get across in every interview. So no matter what the question was, it was my agenda and not theirs. And so I got this story of hope and healing and recovery and all these, wonderful messages out to the public. Because, as I learned later after, many years of being in the field of trauma, mental health, and addiction, what I did during those 4 days was I got rid of a lot of stigma attached to what was happening. So then, the next thing on the docket was the first book signing, right? And my expectations for this book were like 0, okay? I didn't think anybody was going to read it. I thought I'd show up, I'd sign 10 books, go to the next town, 10 books, so on and so forth. Well, I show up at the biggest Indigo chapter store in all of Canada, and I walked through the front doors, and there was 400 people standing in line with my book. And I'm like, what the hell are all these people doing here, And so I sat down at the book signing table, and I started signing books. And out of the corner of my eye, I spot this guy in line. And he's got my book clutched against his chest, and his face is buried in the floor, and he's walking really slow. And I was like, I wonder what's up with that guy, right? Mm-hmm. And those of us who've experienced extreme trauma, like, we're hypervigilant, right? We know, what's going on before everybody else in the room knows what's going on, right? So I followed him all the way in the line. He gets to the front of the line, puts the book on the table, looks me in the eye, and says, "Me too." Okay? So right in that moment, I knew what the rest of my life was going to look like, right? And, that guy showed up at that book signing to deliver a spiritual message of 2 simple words, and that was "me too." And I realized in that moment that by me finding the courage and the strength to use my voice to talk about my pain and my suffering, I could also inspire others to do the exact same thing. And then what happened after that first book signing was I got completely run over by people. Everywhere I went, 5, 10, 15, 20 people were coming up at every book signing saying, hey man, you told my story. Me too. Hey, I saw your documentary. You told my story. Me too, right? And my email was filling up. My social media direct messages were filling up with people telling me their stories of their own sexual abuse or their own trauma or whatever it was. And then I started speaking. I started getting invited all over North America and Europe to share my story, because there's less than 12 men in all of North America who openly share about their sexual abuse experience. And so that's why I've been, one of the busiest guys on the planet, is because, there isn't that perspective out there. And not only is there not that perspective, there isn't the perspective that actually men can heal.
Yeah.
And, the key to all of this is vulnerability. Okay. And I didn't realize it when I was writing the book, but I told that story in an extremely vulnerable way, which allowed other people to feel safe. And when, safety enters a room, that's when the magic of healing happens, is when people feel safe. And, when it's interesting, because I've had a lot of opportunities to work with men's groups, and when you talk about vulnerability, you can see guys shifting in their seats and getting anxious and whatnot. But it was absolutely essential in my own healing process, and it's absolutely essential as we move forward as a society, that vulnerability has to be the number one thing. And not only that is, we all have a story, right? And I did a TED Talk in Vancouver, and I qualified every single person in the audience as trauma survivors by saying, if you have parents, you've experienced trauma in your life, right? And not blaming my mom and dad or anything. They were doing the best they could with what they had, and if they knew better, they would do better, right? And so we all carry that, right? And then if you even look at epigenetics and DNA and all of that, trauma gets passed down, in the gene pool, and it lasts for as long as 7 generations. And so, we're all in this together, and I believe, there was a wise woman at one of my conferences that stood up and said, trauma is the string which binds us all together as human beings. And I went, man, there's no truer statement that has ever been made, than what this lady just said. And my experience over the last, 11 years is that trauma is, that commonality that we all share. And we're all looking for healing. And that vulnerability really brings everybody together, and I'll share a story with you about the reason why I get out of bed every day. Is I was doing a conference in Calgary, and we had 100 people in our audience, and basically the first part of the morning session is creating that safety for everybody, right? And so the afternoon session started, but in the morning session, I could see that there was a guy in our audience who had a real burning desire that he was carrying around, a secret that he wanted to get rid of. And he stood up and he said, I just want everybody to know that I've never felt this safe in a room in my whole entire life. And he said, I've been carrying around a very deep, dark secret. And he said, I molested my sister for 11 years. Okay. And there was some women in our audience who had been molested by their brothers. And 3 of them got out of their chairs, went over and hugged this man. And to me, like that's the kind of healing that needs to happen in this world, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, it was everything we talk about as healers, is compassion, is empathy, is, you know, all these things that need to happen. And you know, there it was, like, right, like I was so incredibly grateful to witness, you know, that type of healing. And like I said, that's the kind of healing that needs to happen, you know, every day in this, you know, in this society, especially with COVID. You know,
Yep.
COVID's the most traumatic thing that's happened since World War II, and the aftermath when we do get out of it, you know, and we've had more opioid deaths and suicides than we've actually had COVID deaths. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Right. So
Theo, here's a question for you. Forgiveness.
mhm.
Where is forgiveness for you, and have you forgiven those who have violated you?
Right. So that's a thing I always talk about, and is an essential part of healing. You know, but you know, a lot of people, you know, are like this, or they get triggered by the word forgiveness, right? So, you know, I call it self-compassion more than anything else, right? If you're triggered by the word forgiveness, then, you know, let's use this, or let's come up with another phrase, or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
when I was writing my second book, with a neuroscientist, the 2 of us said that we wanted to set an intention to start to work in the prison system in Canada. Not really knowing why, other than we were just curious. Okay. So that has come to fruition. I've been to about 24 prisons now across Canada.
Wow.
And so one particular day we were at Stony Mountain Penitentiary in just outside of Winnipeg. Okay. And we had an audience of 400 inmates. Okay. And we were having this amazing conversation about trauma, mental health, and addiction with these inmates. Because, you know, my story has, I don't know, 15 layers of trauma. These guys in the prison system, their layers are 40, 50, 60, 70 layers of trauma. So I know why they end up there, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, we're having this amazing conversation. They're asking us amazing questions, giving us amazing feedback. There's guys sharing their stories left, right, and center. And I spot this kid. He's in the last row at the back of the room. And he's really fidgety, can't sit in his chair. And so I say to him, I say, hey, you got something to say? The kid stands up, and let me back it up a little bit. So while Kim and I were writing this book, Conversation with a Rattlesnake, the topic of forgiveness came up. And Kim said to me, how do you feel about forgiveness? And I was like, nope, ain't happening, you know? I go, why do I need to forgive? I go, those people hurt me. Why do I need to forgive them? And she's like, oh, hold it right there. She said, stop right there. She said, I just want you to think about forgiveness. And I was like, okay, I can do that. You know, I can think about forgiveness. So anyways, this kid stands up and he looks exactly like Eminem, the rapper. Okay. He's got the flat beat cap. He's got tattoos from his neck down to his feet, you know, and he's cool, right? So the first thing out of his mouth, he said, Theo Fleury says, you're my hero. And I was like, wow, I didn't expect that, you know. And he said, as you can see, he says, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. And he said, I used to be a really great hockey player. And he said, when I was 14 years old, I grew up on the north end of Winnipeg, which is a really kind of rough and tumble area in Winnipeg. And he said, I got involved with the wrong crowd. And he said, I started selling drugs. And he said, I've been in and out of jail ever since. Then he says, you'll never guess who I was with 3 weeks ago in Grand Cache, Alberta. I was like, I don't know, who were you with? He said, I was with Graham James, the guy that abused me. He was in jail with my abuser. Okay. And so he said, because you're my hero, my sole intent while I was in that prison was I was going to beat the shit out of this guy for you. Okay. But he said, Graham is very heavily guarded because everybody wants to beat the shit out of this guy. Right.
Yeah.
So he said, I waited and I waited and I waited. And he said, I got my chance. He said, the guards left his room and I walked into his room and he wasn't there. So I started searching around and I went to the left side of the bed and he wasn't there. And he said, I walked over to the right side of the bed and there he was, curled up in a ball in the fetal position in the corner of his room. And the kid said, I didn't do anything. You know what I said to the kid? I said, you're my hero for not doing anything. And in that moment, remember, she said, think about forgiveness.
Yeah.
And there was the universe to tell me that it was time for me to forgive, right? And somebody who's curled up in a ball in the fetal position, guess what? They're in pain and they're suffering, right? And I'm not, you know, I'm in a prison, you know, inspiring these inmates to, you know, have a better life and whatnot. And so, you know, these things happen all the time when you're in healing, you know, because you're awake, you know, you're not numbing yourself out with alcohol and drugs and food and sex and gambling and workaholism and all these things. You know, you're actually present. And so you can see these amazing things.
You're open to receive.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, when you surrender and you turn your will and your life over to the care of whatever you want to call it, God, Allah, Buddha, Jehovah, you know, I call it the universe. You know, when you surrender and turn your life over, you know, these things happen all the time. Because, you know, when I was out there active in my addiction, you know, and I always say to people, left to my own defenses, left to me running my own life is the biggest shit show on the planet when I'm running my own life. And when I drive the bus always crashes. And so, you know, to get out of the driver's seat and get in the passenger seat and just, you know, trust in whatever it is you believe in, you know, to me, that's probably the best advice I can give people is that when you're struggling, you know, like you can't outthink mental illness. You can't outthink it.
No.
You can't outthink addiction. You know, you can't do it on your own. And, you know, the day I asked for help was the day that I saved my own life, right? And it doesn't mean you're weak. You know, it means you have tremendous courage and tremendous strength and that you actually do care about yourself, you know? Because like I said, I didn't care. I didn't care if I lived or died or whatever, you know, and it was because I was unwilling to get honest, to be vulnerable, and to, you know, share what was going on.
So
And everything that I'd made up in my head was completely false. You know, when I told my story, the world embraced me.
yes.
And they fell even deeper in love with my story, you know? And, you know, to be able to to get that kind of gift, you know.
I love that you're doing this. I mean, you're breaking down those stigmas around being open and sharing. So how do we change societal standards and get people, particularly men, to just open up and be more vulnerable, have more compassion?
Yeah, well, I've done every type of therapy known to mankind, okay? And the most effective therapy, the cheapest therapy, is a little thing called group therapy, okay? And you get a bunch of people in a room and you use vulnerability to create safety. And then once you have safety, it's amazing. People just start popping up out of their chairs and they start sharing stuff that they've never shared with anybody before. And I really believe that's it, you know. Obviously, you know, we have certain certain types of mental illness that need a little bit more work and need a little bit more professional help, you know, like things like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, OCD, you know, these type of things. But what I've experienced is that, you know, like I've had people come into rooms where they were suicidal. And if they didn't have a good experience that day, they were going to go home and kill themselves. And they didn't do it. You know, they felt safe and they felt at home and they felt a place where they were completely understood and not judged and absolutely embraced, you know, and their courage was, you know, commended and celebrated and all those things. And so, you know, we haven't created that safe space in society yet. And until we do, nothing's going to change, right? Like, if you look at all of the campaigns that are out there around mental illness, right? Bell Let's Talk and, you know, all these things. But what they say is 1 in 5 Canadians suffer from mental illness. And I'm like, why are we shaming the one person who has mental illness? You know, they already feel isolated already,
Right.
you know? And I really believe it's 5 in 5. It's all of us.
Mhm.
And the only way we're going to get out of it is by bringing everybody together, right? And we have the highest awareness in the history of our planet around mental illness. But on the other side of the spectrum, we have the highest suicide rates in the history of our planet. So why isn't all this awareness being turned into action and getting people well? Well, we can't talk about trauma.
Right.
And trauma is the catalyst. Trauma is the catalyst. Trauma brings us into mental illness and addiction, right?
So I'm going to ask you a question, Theo. When you wrote this book, you opened yourself to vulnerability and you revealed things about you that no one or a lot of people did not know about you, and you received a worldwide hug, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden you wrote your second book, and now we have a live production of your book.
Yeah.
How did that all come to be?
Yeah.
And did you have any input on how the show would go? Because
No.
I've heard only rave reviews. The three of us are going to be going to the show on the 22nd, and we're so excited.
Yeah.
And as well as the Mayfield Dinner Theater and the Hilton in West End has graciously, the Doubletree has graciously given us 2 tickets to
that's awesome.
give
away. Oh, perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
So
exciting.
we're going to be giving that to a lucky viewer. So we're very excited about this. So how did this all come to be that now you are a live production?
Yeah. Well, you know, I've had so many incredible, amazing things happen in my life, you know. You know, like I was in Colorado the day that Columbine happened. I was in New York the day that 9/11 happened. You know, I played on the Canadian Olympic team that hadn't won a gold medal in 52 years. So, you know, I'm kind of like the living Forrest Gump is how I see is how I, you know, how I sort of see my life, you know?
Yeah.
And how the play came about was I was actually going to play myself in the original production, right?
Wow.
And, you know, when I sat down, I actually took some acting lessons, which was hilarious. And when I got to the gun scene, I picked up the gun and I started laughing uncontrollably because I'd come so far from that scene. I was like, why would I traumatize myself every time, you know, I pick up this gun? I was like, you know what, we need somebody else to, you know, to do this.
Mhm.
And, you know, from the very first time I stepped on the ice and you know, which was at 5 years old, I quickly realized that I was an entertainer. Okay. That I could inspire people and give people hope. And, you know, every small guy that played hockey, you know, saw me as some sort of hero, right? It gave them hope. It gave them an opportunity to dream as big as they wanted to dream. And so, you know, writing books, speaking, playing in the NHL, performing music, or having a play by myself, it's just another avenue because we all learn differently. Some of us like to read, some of us are visual, some of us, you know what I mean? And so we have tried to exhaust this story in every shape and form of entertainment, you know? And, you know, like I played in New York and I loved to go to Broadway. I enjoyed going to Broadway to see live theater because there's nothing more,
Raw.
yeah, it's raw.
Yeah.
And a really good performance will take you through the full gamut of all of your emotions.
Yeah.
And that's why we love it. That's why we love theater. That's why we love the cinema, because we want, you know, the people that are portraying the story, you want them to take you through, you know, all of your emotions.
That's right.
Yeah.
And for guys like me who ran away from their feelings for, you know, as long as I could possibly do it,
Right.
you know, this play is all about that.
Wow.
And the guy that plays me, Sean Smith, is like a tremendous actor. And I remember the first time I went to it, I actually went to Edmonton when it was at the Citadel, I believe.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And I went there with the attitude, you know what, I'm going to just be like everybody else in the audience. And I'm going to let this thing take me wherever I want it to go. And you know what? As I was sitting there watching my life play out, you know, I was watching people beside me and they were laughing hysterically and they were crying uncontrollably. And I was just like, wow, you know, like this is really cool, you know? And I think people, like, I think I'm completely misunderstood character in the world, you know? And the play allows people to really get to know me and get to know what my struggles were and what drove my, you know, success, and then, you know, the fall, and then the rebuild, and then the redemption, and, you know, all of this stuff. And so, you know, it's been an amazing project, you know, the director and the set, like the set is, you know, when you walk into the theater, you're going to be blown away. You're going to be like, how the hell did somebody think about doing something like this, you know?
And it's all on ice, right? Like,
yeah, and he basically does a 2-hour monologue skating on the ice.
Jeez.
And it's incredible.
And
Wow.
So I'm excited that you guys are going, because it's gonna be awesome.
So are we. So did you have a moment where you watching it for the first time, did you have a moment that really hit you hard, that kind of went like, whoa, like an epiphany almost? Or
Well, when I was a kid, I wasn't like your regular kid. I was really focused and really determined, and to see all of my dreams play out in front of my eyes, good, bad, or indifferent. It didn't really matter, it was really kind of like how the hell am I still alive?
Well, that's a question we all have.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it just, like, I'm grateful for the resilience. Really, I am. Because without that piece, I think I would have given up a long time ago. But each and every part of my life built this incredible resilience, and it built this incredible need for me to want to be loved and cared for. And throughout the play, like, even though I'm talking about myself in the third person, like, you absolutely fall in love with this character, because he, no matter what gets thrown at him, he figures it out, and he always comes out better than he was, before. And I think that all of us, we get into those places where we don't think that we have the strength inside of us to overcome what we need to overcome. And you watch this guy, self-destruct in front of your eyes, and you're just like, whoa, how did he survive? Well, he survived because he had resilience built into him. And what I always tell people is, the deepest, darkest moments of your life are the absolute most important times in your life. It may not feel that way, may not look that way, but there are incredible lessons in pain and suffering. And if you're willing to go through the pain and suffering, the gifts at the end of that process are the reason why we're on this earth, right?
Yeah.
That's why we're here, and obviously God picked me a long time ago, and said that I do this wonderful therapeutic process called EMDR. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's one of the most effective ways to heal your post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. And I remember one session, we actually went all the way back to conception of my life. So, like, the 5 minutes right before I attached to my mom and started developing in my mom's womb. And, it was just me and the big guy upstairs. And basically he said, nothing that you've experienced hasn't been planned. This is your life, and he said, I gave you all these obstacles because I knew you were going to be strong enough to do this. And so, if that's the way it was for me, then I think it's the same way for all of us.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
That there are no coincidences, that everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
And those times of, whatever it is, depression or anxiety or, whatever it is, those things are meant to happen because there's a lesson, that we need to learn. And, when you're sober and you're feeling things, that's part of the process, and without being present, the universe keeps putting these lessons in front of us. And if we're not present and we're not awake to see them, they'll come all the way back around and they'll keep presenting themselves until we get them, right?
Yep.
And when we get them, you know, whatever we get, we got to give it away, right? Because why the hell would we go through all this pain and suffering if there wasn't really a purpose for it, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, like I said, when that guy showed up at that book signing and, you know, sort of hit me over the head with a sledgehammer and said, hey, this is what the rest of your life is going to look like, you know? Because I had no idea what, you know, like I always say, when I retired from hockey, all I had was a grade 12 diploma from Vanier Collegiate in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And I had no idea what the rest of my life was going to look like, because I always thought I was going to play hockey for the rest of my life. But, you know, there was always a higher purpose. There was always a higher calling for me.
Yeah.
And that guy, you know, showed it to me that day. And then subsequently, every single person who's reached out to tell me their story, it's all been part of this whole bigger plan that, you know, that I could have never even, you know, imagined.
No kidding.
So,
well, Theo, we're almost out of time here. I think the ladies have a couple questions to
sure.
kind of get at you with.
I'm a windbag, so.
Janny,
Well, I'll go. So Theo, do you miss not playing hockey? Like, I mean, I just think it's fabulous that they're ice skating. I really do. I'm just like, I can't wait to go and see it.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to see this man, you know, just pour his heart and soul out every single night for, you know, weeks at a time, you know. So do I miss the thing I miss the most is competing, right?
Yeah.
You know,
That makes sense.
I don't miss all the other bullshit, you know, traveling and hotels and, you know, that's what I always tell people. There's nothing glamorous about being a professional athlete other than the paycheck. That's about it.
Yeah.
You know.
So along that whole skating line, if you could create your own dream team, hockey team, past or present, who would be on it and why?
Jeez. Well, I think Gretzky.
Yeah.
Mario Lemieux.
Cool.
Joe Sakic.
Ooh.
Patrick Waugh. Chris Chelios. And Scott Stevens would be my six guys that I would, you know.
That'd be a pretty darn good team. Some of those.
That would be a rocking team.
Yeah.
I think you already answered my question. I wanted to know who your favorite Oiler was.
No. You know, I absolutely loved those games, you know, because back when I played, they were brutal, you know, they were violent and they were, but they were pure at its core was competition, you know. And, you know, you add in the animosity, the hate, the resentment, you know, all those things. And that's what made all of us great, you know, was that will to win, you know. And, you know, I was very blessed and to be able to be a part of that, that incredible rivalry. And, you know, we all get together, which is very rare, you know, both teams get together in the same room, you know, there is a tremendous amount of respect.
Yes.
Because we made them better and they made us better.
Right.
And, you know, that's the ultimate compliment you can pay to somebody that you absolutely hated playing against, you know. But, you know, it was an amazing rivalry and you know, that time I look back and I just remember after every game, you know, ice bags everywhere, all over your body, you know.
Oh.
But ultimately that's why you play the game, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have a bump or a bruise after playing in a game like that, then you know you didn't give everything you had, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, our sport is highly, highly, highly competitive. You know, we get paid to win. And when
Yeah.
we don't win, you know, we take that right to the core of our soul, you know. And so that's what those games were about. You know, when you were sitting in the dressing room putting on your hockey equipment, you weren't putting on hockey equipment, you were putting on a suit of armor and you were going to war.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, but they don't build hockey players like that anymore.
No.
You know, they don't.
It is a very different game now.
It is.
It is a
It
different
is.
game.
Now that, you know, I remember when there was no need for helmets or masks, you know, like,
Yeah.
look at how time has changed, you know, and
Yeah.
I just want
Well,
to.
I think that's a reflection of society is we've lost respect for one another,
Right.
you know, and somehow we got to get that back,
We do.
right? We have to get that back because I believe that, you know, has really kind of put a wedge in. You know, you look at the political landscape of the world and, you know, it's all about division, you know, and I have to choose whether I'm right or left. You know, I can't be in the middle anymore. You know, I want to be in the middle. You know, and the world, and I know this because of my spiritual teachings. You know, one of my spiritual teachers is one of the most powerful medicine men in the world, and what he's taught me is that the world has absolutely everything we need. The world has abundance. And, you know, what we're seeing a lot of that abundance being taken away and it's not being shared with everybody, you know, and you know, like he takes people from the Tom Baker Cancer Center who've been given 3 or 4 months to live and cures them with medicine that's out your back door.
Right.
You know, so, you know, there's all of that too. And, you know, I have a lot of time to sit and think, and I'm a thinker, and, you know, I always try to, you know, leave it better than when I came. Right.
That's what my mom taught me.
100%.
You know, and that's the kind of attitude we need, you know, but
we need to,
you know,
we need to love Mother Earth and respect her because that's all we have, right?
It's all we have. It's all we have. And you know, thank God that, you know, I found that spiritual piece because that is the key to everything, you know, and it's always the first question I ask an addict or an alcoholic or somebody who's addicted to something. I go, where are you at spiritually?
Exactly.
You know, because a lot of them, you know, are pissed off at God, right?
Yeah.
You know, but if you look at the struggle as an opportunity to grow, you know, that's what it's all about, right? And you know, I got lost way too many times in my life and lost perspective and lost what's really important, you know, and ultimately I lost myself in all of it, right?
Yeah.
And being able to find myself and have a relationship with myself that is loving, caring, compassionate, you know, that's ultimately what healing is about, you know.
Exactly.
And you know that as a yoga instructor, that's what it's all about, you know, is getting in touch with your soul,
right,
and what your soul needs to heal. You know, we got to breathe, right?
Yeah.
You know, breath is life. You know,
exactly.
I used to catch myself on the couch all the time, and I'd stop breathing, and I'm like, "What the hell is this all about?" You know, I stopped breathing. You know,
We're stressed, we breathe very shallow, so the deep breathing is so important.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, Theo, we have to say goodbye, but I want to tell you on behalf of Every Woman Empowered and Chit Chat, we want to thank you for sharing with us and helping our viewers to see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that there is help, that they're not alone. And I really have to say that it's been an honor to talk to you today and for you to share everything that you have. Like I said, we're looking forward to seeing you seen your show, I should say, not you, but your show. You,
Yeah.
but not you.
Well, I believe that Sean carries a piece of me in every performance. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all know that the universe and God is not done with you yet. You still have a lot more that you need to do and a lot more lives you need to touch. And we want to thank you for being a part of our show today.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much.
I always am grateful for the opportunity to talk about this because, like I said, it's the biggest epidemic on the planet.
It is. Thank you so much. All the best, Theo. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
You